Excuse me.
Okay, what's up, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube? RIB back for another video, and this one is going to be, should only be kind of like one topic, one main topic anyway. So yeah. Oh, sorry. As always, joining me is Kevin.
Thank you very much. You almost forgot me that time,
Yeah,
but
I was just going to say I'm a little bit rusty. I haven't done this in a very long time. I haven't done a podcast in ages. So, okay, so we actually have a few guests with us tonight. So we have all from the iDebate server. We have Hollow, Esther, and we have Arena.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay, so as I had said, the podcast tonight will be kind of focusing around the recent George Floyd story and the brutality by the police that is, that caused it and that has ensued since. So if like any of you guys just kind of want to like say kind of how you like immediately reacted to it or something like that, that would kind of like get us started.
Okay, I'll jump in. Okay, so I'll jump in. So I was regrettably, well, not regrettably, but I was disgusted, but regrettably not surprised. Just because of, from an Irish perspective, that is what we hear in terms of police interaction with people in the States, particularly minorities. It doesn't tend to end well, generally speaking. So yeah, I was absolutely disgusted, especially seeing the video of it. It was horrendous to see the man struggling for breath and pleading for his life at the end of it, and the guy with his hands in his pockets, and then his colleagues standing by doing nothing, all equally culpable in my mind. But yeah, just absolute revulsion. But unfortunately, I wasn't terribly shocked, just because it just seemed like the continuation of US.
Yeah, I've been kind of trying to collect my thoughts on this. It's obviously an extremely kind of hard thing to talk about, not just because of the kind of gravity of exactly what happened, but also just how kind of foreign a concept it is for me and for like you, Kevin, as well.
Yeah,
like this, it just the unnecessary part of this is just continues to stand out to me, because whereas yes, racism does exist everywhere, we are not exempt from that. We have racism here in Ireland, but this sort of brutality by the police just doesn't happen here.
No, from what I've seen, a lot of the police force in the States seem to act as if they're occupying a foreign country as opposed to policing their own neighborhood.
Yeah.
Does that kind of make sense? Does that kind of ring true? As in, they use the utmost level of force needed or the utmost level of force not even needed, but that can be justified to resolve an issue. And that just isn't something you see elsewhere, like in Ireland especially, or even in other places. Like in Ireland in particular, after we attained our own independence from UK, specific measures were put into place to remove the gun from Irish politics, because we had gone through years of bloody conflict and such. That's the specific reason the Irish police force isn't an armed force. I think we're the better for it, seeing that how people interact in the States, and unfortunately just because there is that level of systemic racism it comes to a head in the police force, and we see these disgusting displays like we saw there a couple of weeks ago with George Floyd.
Yeah. I'll just make this point, and then I'll kind of open it up to everybody else. So get ready. The one takeaway, and like this might kind of seem a little bit kind of like harsh or insensitive at first, but the one thing that I am not glad, but at least a little bit relieved about, is that everybody knows George Floyd's name, and I genuinely cannot think of the cop's name. And that's something that, again, not relieved about, but at least hopeful for, you know?
It's an exact role reversal of the mass shooter paradigm, isn't it?
Yeah. That's kind of like a little bit of like a brief introduction. Believe me, I have more to say about this. But so like that's kind of like from our kind of Irish perspective on the kind of like overview of it. Like, do any of you guys, because like you all live in the States, albeit in different parts, but do you guys kind of, I don't know, want to kind of share something or say whatever?
I mean, I'm not surprised that all of this happened, but I figure it's just a matter of time, since this seems like a big one happens every couple of years here.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I guess it's weird for other countries to like think about this, because, you know, like for us it's just like another conversation starter. Like, to us this is like conversations over coffee. You know, like, oh, did you hear about the shooting? Oh, did you hear this person died? It's just, it happens more often than it's supposed to, so it's disappointing, but it's not surprising. You know, like, especially during this climate, it's sad, but it's just nothing seems to blow me away anymore. Well, that was my initial reaction to when it happened. I was just like, whoa, another person died because of police brutality. Oh, there you have it, folks. Nothing's changed. That's just how I feel about it.
That's the saddest reaction.
Yeah, it's
of
terrible.
all, I think. Yeah.
I'd rather be shocked and angry and upset than to tell myself, oh, another day. Or like another month or another person. Yeah. It's very upsetting to think about.
It shouldn't be so normalized that it becomes part of the reality. It should be shocking. It should be abhorrent. But the fact that it isn't almost speaks more volumes to it.
Yeah, exactly. Shows that there's like a lot of underlying issues that America still hasn't addressed after these 400 years, or after these, well, probably more than that, of, you know, systemic problems that we've created.
Yeah, it's I just keep coming back to this thing of like it's just so foreign to me, and I'm sure Kevin as well. I suppose like it's like not even necessarily to say that like we have like the correct reaction. It's not that anybody else, like that anybody from the States has like the bad reaction to it, but it's just, to us it's just because this is so different and it's so abnormal, and that's almost in a way kind of sad to say that it is kind of become almost normal in the States. But
and just to expand upon that, a little bit of thought I had recently regarding the whole thing. So last year, my cousin had to go over to the States for an occasion, and she had friends over there at such and such. And one of the things that the friends did to brief her in advance was, in the off chance that you get pulled over, the norm over here is to kind of get out of the car and meet the Gardaí being the Irish police force, and meet them on the side of the road, that kind of thing. And they're like, you increase your chances of getting shot exponentially if you do that to a police officer in the US. You stay in the car, lower the window, keep your hands on the 10 and 2, and speak when spoken to type thing. And I cannot imagine living in a world where that level of terrified scrutiny has to be placed on every interaction you have with the people who are supposed to protect you. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, what you're basically describing there is an like immense fear. But that's but like it's just the complete and utter backwards position. You shouldn't fear the people that you pay through your taxes in order to protect and serve. Like it's just backwards. You know?
Yeah.
You're their boss. You're paying their wages.
And ultimately, just before we get a bit further into drilling into maybe some of the specific issues, or maybe a last point of contrast. So here in Ireland, to become a Gardaí, a member of the Garda Síochána, that's the Irish police force, you have to do what I think is a 3 or 4 year course that essentially amounts to a bachelor's degree in it in policing. We have a specific college set up for police officers to go to and to attend, the same as you would for any other profession. That's the kind of level of scrutiny we place on police force here in Ireland.
Yeah.
It seems over in the States, you just kind of, it's a job with the most responsibility imaginable and the least amount of scrutiny placed on the candidates suitable for the job. Like any, and particularly the likes of, I don't know if this particular George Floyd, if his murder was guilty of this, but an awful lot of former military people seem to make their way into the armed forces as way of natural career progression, and they're just plagued with PTSD and stuff like that, and then they kind of bring it to the streets, and that just compounds problems and whatever. But ultimately, a lack of kind of correct screening and a lack of professionalism seems to be at the core, one of the issues at the core of what seems to be systemically wrong with the police force in the US.
I don't disagree. From the best of my knowledge, all that you need is like a high school diploma, and I think it's like a few weeks of training. I could be wrong about the length of training, but that's definitely all of the qualifications that you need.
A lot of states are requiring 2 years in college now, but that's not the majority.
Yeah,
you don't have to do that, but a lot require it now.
Is it in college in a policing degree or in college in general?
Like a 2-year criminal justice degree.
Oh,
usually.
yes. Good.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. It's not even a 4-year degree. It's generally a 2-year degree in criminal justice and then like 6 or 7 months of academy training.
Yeah, I mean, it's a step. It's a step in the right direction, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
It should be federal wide, though.
But a lot of the roadblocks to reforming police, at least here in the United States, are police unions. And I've actually read probably at least a dozen police union contracts from different places all throughout the United States. Their main goal is not accountability. Their main goal is protecting police officers regardless of how wrong they are.
Mm.
Yeah, and that kind of circles us back. The initial autopsy report, and this was done by somebody who works with the police, with that department, said that there was no evidence of strangulation or of, like, you know, anything that would suggest that the cop kneeling on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, which is fucking ridiculous, was the cause of death. But as soon as there was an independent autopsy done, it said that there was no question that that was the cause of death. That cop killed him. So it just kind of circles back to this point of, you know, you have the kind of the procedures in place, whereas, like, you know, if something happens, there is, you know, the autopsy, the investigators, the, you know, council that is supposed to be there to kind of keep cops in check, but based on the evidence that we have so far anyway, they kind of seem to let them away with so much so often.
I mean, of course they're going to do that because they're they're essentially investigating their buddies. You know, they're the same. They're the same people as such. You know, they work for the same boss. So of course they're going to let them off easily. So that's like, I've no issue with workers' unions in general, but
Yeah.
for this kind of thing, I don't know, because the whole point of a workers' union is that it benefits its members to the
Yeah.
at all costs, possibly to the detriment of other parties involved. That can't be the mindset you take with the police. It just can't be.
Yeah, well, I mean, as we had said, you know, like, at least it shouldn't be anyway. You know, it just definitely shouldn't be.
No.
So yeah, that there's been a number of kind of suggestions that have come forward since like this whole thing happened. These are not new organizations. The police is one of them. That's kind of like maybe like arguably the main one. There's a few others that those names are escaping me, and I'm so sorry about that. But they have like a list of proposals to change that would all but certainly fix or at least amend some of the things that have happened. So, you know, things like not being able to turn your body cam off by penalty of law.
Yeah.
That just kind of seems like a basic one to me.
Why do they have an off switch?
Yeah, exactly. The body cam is there to kind of, I mean, the argument can be made that the body cam is there to prove that the cop did nothing wrong.
That's what I'm saying. If you're honest,
if you did nothing wrong,
why
would you need to turn it off?
Yeah. You need to turn it off so you can sprinkle a bit of crack on the perpetrator as they're lying there dying. That's what you need to turn off for.
Yeah.
But another problem that we have is, I believe it was if I'm remembering correctly, I think it's Warren versus District of Columbia, and it was in either 81 or 82 in a District of Columbia Court of Appeals, straight up ruled that it is not the duty of police officers to provide policing services to citizens based on the public duty doctrine. So this court essentially stated that police aren't really designed to protect and serve. This seems to substantiate the idea that's floating around and has been floating around, especially within more minority communities, that the police are really just an occupying force designed to keep citizens in line.
Man, listen, from outside looking in, that is what your police force looks like it's doing.
Yeah.
Your police force looks utterly foreign to what me and Stephen would look at a police force like. They're not.
Absolutely.
They're not there to help the community. As I mentioned earlier on, they're there as an occupying force to keep people in line. That's what they are.
Yes.
It's just, and they have the armaments to do so. Like, all the money that's going into the police force for these armored personnel characters and whatever other military surplus equipment that they need, why don't they put that into correct training of these individuals? Why don't they put that funding in to train the people correctly so that your average beat cop knows how to interact with people, knows how to manage their beat and keep people safe and keep people happy? Why is none of that being done?
Because that's not the goal. That is not the goal of the police. It's never been the goal of the police. The criminal justice, I shouldn't say our, because you guys, at least to my knowledge, don't actually live in the United States. Here in the United States, the goal of the criminal justice system is to generate profit for the private prison company. like Geo Corporation of America. These companies are the main companies that fund a lot of police unions. They're the ones that fund a lot of these crime bills and other bills that keep drugs illegal, like marijuana and other drugs. Like, it's literally all a profiteering ring.
Like, if the fire department ran in the same way that the police force ran in the US, there would be fire department brand matches and gasoline.
Yes.
To create profit. It's just disgusting the way the police is ran. Like, it's just, and the whole complex behind it, for-profit prisons, the amount of people sentenced, and the kickbacks to judges, and it's just fucking disgusting.
Yeah, it is. It's this just seems like one of those kind of rare issues that almost like unites everybody, irregardless of kind of background, evidently of skin color, of, you know, it doesn't matter what your politics are for the most part. We can all kind of come together and say, yeah, that like this is like what happened to George is just wrong. Maybe on how we kind of deal with it, maybe there's some disagreement there, but like the kind of overarching point is that almost everybody agrees that was just unjustified and that didn't need to happen. And it's why there's all the riots and the protests that are happening all over the States. I seen that it was about a week ago. There was on one particular day, there was riots and there was protests in all 50 states. There was not one state on this one day that did not protest. And that just fucking says so much to me. It just says so much that, like, obviously, irregardless of what your politics are, because you have, you know, states that are very red and that are very blue, all of us have come together and said, like, no, like, shit needs to change. This shouldn't have happened, and we need to get justice for this.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
And another problem there is that the very people that have the power to change this are seeing what's going on and are doing nothing. Instead of doing something to change this, they're wearing traditional African scarves and kneeling. And that is just pissing people off even more, because everybody can see through that and tell that they're just virtue signaling, that they have no intention of actually trying to change the system that they got rich off of.
Well, it does, because I know the photo op, that's what I'm going to call it, because that's what it was. Yes. Like that you're talking about. All of those, like, there was Nancy Pelosi, there was Chuck Schumer, there was they were all Democrats, all of them. I don't know the names of the rest of them, at least off the top of my head. They've had the opportunity since this happened. Okay, maybe you can kind of forgive them for the first couple of days after the whole George Floyd thing happened, but definitely after a week, they could have proposed something that said, no, like this can't happen again, and this is how we are going to do it. We are going to legislate that cops can't turn off their body cams, that there needs to be independent in that, like, people who will investigate a report against a cop if he kind of escalates, or if he is accused of being like racist, if he is accused of racially profiling. They could have done so, like, that and so much more, and yet they didn't. What they did is they posed for a photo, but it means nothing.
Meaningless lip service.
Yeah, it's literally nothing. And it's this will be a very, very kind of like a brief detour, but I will kind of circle back. But like we've seen this time and time again. This is not new. You know,
exactly.
when kind of conventional Democrats, when they saw Nancy Pelosi ripping up Trump's speech at the State of the Union, they were all like, yeah, slay queen, you showed him. But a day or two later, she turned around and did exactly what he wanted him to do. So, like, it's just like, yeah, you had this cool moment, I guess, and you had this this moment where an awful lot of people were kind of pointing to you and saying like, "Oh, she's a power queen" or whatever the fuck. But you turn around literally 48 hours later and do Trump's bidding. So it means
they're literally all no go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It was excuse me. It was mainly your corporatist Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. I think a couple other of your high-profile Democrats were there, but a lot of the other newer Democrats that are much more progressive were not there. Those were the ones that were actually out at these protests with people trying to make change.
Yeah.
And that shows the divide, and I don't want to digress too much here, but that shows the divide that we're seeing in the Democratic Party and why so many of the younger people that are more progressive don't view the Democratic Party as being much different than the Republican Party, because they're not.
No. I saw a fantastic meme on Twitter, and it was literally perfect. So it showed it was the photo of the cop kneeling on George Floyd's neck, and that was it was labeled as the Republicans, and it showed the cop that was standing literally next to him looking down on him as the Democrats. And it's like
that's perfect.
They largely kind of do things or try to or fight for policies that will kind of fuck over regular people, and the Democrats, while as they pretend to kind of fight back against them, they always let them win, and they always let their policies through because they don't have a fucking backbone and they don't fight back against them. It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
Like establishment politics in the US, it just seems like tag team WWF wrestling. Like the Democrats will go in, then they'll tag in the Republicans, but it's still the same people doing the same thing and fucking the same people over for the same goal at the end of the day. It's just, I don't know.
I don't know how many of you watched Game of Thrones, but Daenerys' analogy that she gave for the different houses in Westeros being like a wheel and each house is a spoke.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter which spoke is at the top, the wheel continuously just runs over the people. That's the US political system, but there's only two spokes. The Democratic and the Republican Party. Doesn't matter which spoke is where. They just continuously run over the people. And the minute I heard that, I was like, wow, you could definitely take that and represent the American political system with the same analogy.
Yeah, a fantastic piece of writing from Martin on that one. But it is totally true. And listen, in many established democratic countries, that unfortunately seems to be the status quo after a while. Like here in Ireland, our two big parties are Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, and from the average person, it doesn't matter who's in power. It's not really going to affect you. Do you know that kind of way? It's like they'll make a big show at election time saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're promised this, we promised that. But when it comes into power, regardless, for the average person, it's just the same old.
I don't want to kind of abruptly cut you off, but I can see that Xerxes is here right now. And so I kind of purposefully asked that he, join or whatever. I hope you can hear me, by the way, because your mic is muted. You have now unmuted. Just kind of based on, who you are and what your profession is, I'm just purely fascinated to hear your kind of take on this, JT.
What specifically? Just the George Floyd death or the riots?
The George Floyd death, the concept of the brutality in the police that we have kind of seen, and the riots and the protests since, and not just since, but before that as well. Just kind of overall your kind of opinion on it.
Well, the George's death wasn't justified by any means. Derek Chauvin was obviously not practicing defensive tactics the way that we're taught. We are told explicitly not to put our knees on people's necks. It can cause bodily asphyxiation. It can also cause blood loss to the brain. And by the time you realize what you've done, it's usually too late to correct the mistake. Yeah, the damage is already there. So what he was doing was obviously inappropriate. At the same time, Chauvin was a 19-year veteran of the force, and it's likely that the rookie officers that were with him at the time didn't want to make a scene or say anything because they're new and they feared their own jobs.
That's not good enough, though, is it?
Can I make a quick point? Because I think it's important that why is it that some of these rookie cops fear their jobs? Could it be that police unions only protect the bad cops and seemingly do nothing for the cops that actually call out the corruption? Because there are numerous examples of where police officers have reported corruption or have stepped in to stop something happening. They lose their jobs, but the person that was actually in the wrong does not.
I didn't kind of want to phrase it, and maybe it kind of came across as if it did. I would just like to say that it was not my intention to kind of come across as like I'm interrogating you. Right? That was genuinely not. I don't know if you kind of took it that way or not. Hopefully you didn't. But it's like literally just because you are a cop. I just wanted to kind of know your kind of personal opinion on it.
Well, I mean, obviously he wasn't affecting his training, but the big thing is that with major police departments like Minneapolis or Boston or New York or LA or Chicago, these places tend to run their police departments like Gestapos, right? And this isn't a joke. Okay, they are commanded by the mayor, the elected official, to behave a certain way, and this is what we're seeing here now with like the Minneapolis mayor, just basically throwing the police under the bus and assuming all the white guilt. It's pretty laughable because they've generated this scapegoat, the police force. So they tell them go do this. And then as soon as that backfires, then they can blame it all on the police. Oh, it was their poor training. It was their poor discretion. And this is something that happens as a result of your boss being somebody who isn't elected. Police departments are run by appointed people, right? So their bosses are all politics. It's all politics.
Mm-hmm.
They have to answer to the people who appointed them, not to the citizens that they serve. So the mayor or the mayor's political party, they have favors now that they owe. Sheriffs can sometimes be the same way, but the sheriffs are directly elected by the people, not by a political party, not by some rich elites that did them a favor and put them in that position. They're elected by the people. So if they start to do things that the people don't like, the people will just vote for a new sheriff. And that happens every 4 years. Whereas sometimes police chiefs can serve as police chiefs for 20 years or more. So without a new appointment, because people don't elect the police chief. And there's a massive dynamic, between the two, where you have sheriff's office that are directly beholden to the people, and then police departments which are beholden to the politics of their city. So to me, it just seems like there's more of a political issue here than a brutality one. It's not like Derek Chauvin, a 19-year veteran of the force, with almost no complaints on his record, just woke up and one day said, I'm going to execute a black man today. Like, that wasn't on his mind. What he did was stupid and negligent.
Well, Chauvin did have like 12 previous complaints, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
In 19 years?
Yes.
Yeah, in 19 years. That's less than one complaint per year. That's a lot of complaints if you work for 5 months, but if you work for 19 years, it's virtually nothing. I mean, it's almost impossible to go through life as a police officer and not get a complaint because people are just upset.
I would agree, but I think it was more the substance of those complaints. A lot of them were abuse and brutality and misuse of power and misuse of force, and some of them seem pretty substantiable.
Well, that may be the case, but I haven't seen any substantiation for them. As soon as this came out, a white cop kills a black man, immediately the media seized that, and obviously they're going to paint a picture to perform the narrative. And so until I see some independent verification of these complaints being substantiated enough, I'm not really going to believe them. But again, 12 complaints in 19 years, that's not a lot. That's virtually negligible.
And see, that's another problem, is that we don't do anything to investigate these complaints with cops because the unions won't let them, so we don't actually know whether they're substantiable or not. We don't know if this is actually what happened.
Not all cops are union.
Well, not all of them, but I would argue that probably most of them are, especially in the bigger cities.
Are, but again, that's all politics, remember? Like, the union is basically a political party, like the the fraternal
special
order
interest groups.
Yeah, so obviously you're going to have a political barrier there, but that's just more of the world's politicians shitting on the little man. So I guess brutality in that sense could be just viewed as a physical manifestation of what the U.S. government does to the people.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Where the politicians use the police forces as essentially a way to protect them and their power.
Right, but at the same time, police forces are necessary to maintaining a society.
Yes, absolutely.
And now not only have you succeeded in steamrolling the people, but you've also given them the wrong enemy to hate, and it worked marvelously. You've got Black Lives Matter marching on cities that are primarily comprised of black leadership, black district attorneys, black judges, black mayor, black police chief, primarily black police departments, calling for the abolition of the police on racist grounds.
The only kind of thing that I would say to that is that not very many are saying abolish the police. You've definitely heard it of the hashtag defund the police. Now the justification that I have heard for that is because some states, not all, but some states have a third of their state budget going to the police when they have things like roads that are caked in potholes,
schools that are crumbling, people that are homeless,
exactly, all of these things. So they're basically saying take some of that funding away from the police and reallocate it to those sorts
actually
of things.
Put it into the communities, and crime will drop instead of just increasing policing, which has been shown to not cause crime to go down. In fact, it goes up when you increase. And I can actually cite a study that was published in Nature Journal, one of the world's most respected publications, that shows exactly that. And that's not the only study I can cite.
I'm not certain defunding is the way to go, though, to be honest, because
I think when people hear defund, they think take all funding away, when most people say reduce the funding. So, for instance, the police department of just New York City is $6 billion. That's more than they spend in healthcare, education, addressing poverty, addressing homelessness, and numerous other things combined.
Well,
they don't need $6 billion. Nobody can tell me that police department needs $6 billion.
They have 40,000 cops. The lowest of them make $35,000 a year. The very low totem pole. The average starting in NYPD is $42,000 a year at the bottom of the pay scale. Okay, there are 40,000 of them. So multiply 40,000 by 40,000, and right out of the gate, you're at like almost 400 million.
Just pay $100,000 a year, that would only be $4 billion. That's still $2 billion less.
No, now you have to buy all the police cars. The NYPD has a fleet of almost 150,000 police cars. That's just the patrol vehicles. Those each cost about $90,000 a pop. Then you have the SMT vehicles, and you have the special unit equipment.
As opposed to defunding, I'd rather see allocation of funding in policing maybe perhaps go to other means, like improve training.
That's what
and
people want.
make people, improve the standard of that you have to be to become a police officer. You have to be a professional, as opposed to the the standards that appear to be in the States at the minute, which is just state by state, can vary. I've heard stories in this podcast of just a high school degree and 6 months of police academy, as opposed to some states have 2 years of a degree required. It's very state. Perhaps if that was maybe nationalized and across the board, it might be a bit more consistency.
Yeah, 9 months in a police academy is more time than most people spend in trade schools learning a skill. And most of them make more money than we do. So in order to go to the police academy, most people have to
pay. That's a moot point, though. JT, that's a moot point, though. You should have to train far more to be a police officer than to be a plumber.
Somebody who's carrying a gun and policing a community should require more training than somebody who's going to be an electrician.
How about you guys pay to go through the training and then tell me if you think it's enough? Because the only people I hear making this assertion are people who haven't gone through the training.
I mean, man, I'm only going by
people who have.
I'm only going by what we have over here.
Tell me who has gone to the police academy that it's not enough, and it keeps going up every year. It used to be 400 hours, then it was 600 hours, now it's 750 hours, and by next year it'll be 900 hours. And every time it goes up, it now costs people more money to go, because now every police department pays
consequently,
JT,
and consequently, JT, despite the recent media outroar, cases of police brutality have surprisingly been going down as
they were never
funding
going up
and hours
anyway.
and as funding and hours have gone up. So as people have become more professional at their jobs, brutality in these cases have gone down. So it's a good idea to make it harder to be a police officer.
Because people are afraid of being filmed, we're less likely to do our jobs, and so we don't get involved as much as we used to.
Wait,
I know for a fact that when the protests,
you take the night 6 out less, is what you're saying.
No, yeah, we police less. We don't want to get involved in the political outcry. We don't want to be lynched by the outrage mob, and so we police less. So we have the camera culture now. So anytime somebody starts filming, our personalities change immensely, and it affects the way that we do our job. Because people who have never been a police officer in their life don't know what we're doing when we're doing it. And so they might see pretty much anything we do as outrageous or unnecessary because they're ignorant. And
I did want to ask a quick...
Nowadays, you can go on the internet, and no matter how factually wrong you are on a subject, you can find something that says that you're right. And so people are now living in this insulated echo chamber where they can't be wrong, and it doesn't matter how obviously in the wrong the person was when they were dealing with the police are still in the wrong, okay? I have watched...
Just a quick question, JT.
I've watched video after video of people attacking the police with knives. They get shot, and there's still people in the comment section complaining.
There's no police officers have to pay to go to the academy themselves?
Go ahead.
Because if so, I'm sorry, that's dumb. Somebody that wants to be a police officer shouldn't have to pay to go to the academy. That training should just be provided.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I have a quick question, JT.
I couldn't hear you at first.
Hello. I have a question, JT. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay, so when you were saying how, like, the 9-month time period is, like, a good amount of time, can you tell us, like, what the training consists of?
So, in the beginning of the academy, the first thing you learn is a constitutional law. It's like a whole month dedicated to constitutional law. And then you do another couple months for state law. So we sit there and like jam pack in as much of state law as we can, state statutes. We also carry around the charge code book with us in our vehicles. So if we want to know if someone's committed a crime, we can yank the book out, look at the elements of the crime and see if they fit what we're investigating. We're trained on how to do that. We're trained on how to write reports. That's a big thing. We write reports pretty much every week. Then we do 2 months of firearms trainings. With at least 100 some odd hours of firearms training. We do stress training. We do one hand, two hand. we do single hand reload, we do buddy training, and then we do defensive tactics. And they train us how to restrain people without hurting them, which is why there's usually so many of us on top of one person, because it is easier for 10 people to just hold one guy down without hurting him than it is for one guy to hold him down. Because if I have to restrain myself, I'm going to use pain compliance techniques. But if I have 2 or 3 guys helping me, we can just put our weight on him and we won't necessarily hurt him, but he won't be able to move around and fight us. So that's why
that's something I have heard as well, that people say, oh, well, you don't need 5 officers hold somebody down. It's like it's actually easier and is quite frankly causes less pain to the person. Because I have a friend who went to a community college for 2 years, criminal justice, and was in the Marine Corps for 4 years as a military police officer. And he told me that like that's why you see like 4 or 5 guys holding one person down. It's easier, and it quite frankly less people are going to get hurt. There's going to be less pain and hurt involved in that.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, well,
JT, quick question. Honest question, no bias, whatever. What do you do with regards to de-escalation? Any taught any specific procedures there, or?
We take communication courses. As a matter of fact, we did, I think, 10 different communications courses. We also took global judo, and we were put into real scenarios with professional psychologists where they gave people a script and they had to listen for us to use keywords before they would calm down, because these keywords are used in communications and negotiations to get people to sort of chill out and cooperate with us. But we do have a principle. We ask people to do something first, then we tell them to do it, and if they still refuse, we make them do it, and we will make them do it by any means possible. Like, here's another thing. The people that we're interacting with, they're the ones who choose how much force we use on them.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, George Floyd is 6'6" and 250 pounds, and he was fighting the cops. He was resisting arrest, and they put him on the ground. Now, they should have set him on his butt, but he went to the ground because of what he chose to do. I heard a lot of people complaining about him even being on the ground to begin with. Oh, he was only passing off a $20 counterfeit bill. Well, yeah, and he had hundreds more of them on his person. He was a counterfeiter, which is a federal crime. Yeah. And fight, because they are aware, given their size, that any level of resistance could be articulated to lethal force.
I just have one very, very quick question for you, JT.
Go ahead.
You had mentioned about like George Floyd and the fact that he had counterfeit bills and he had them on his person, and that he was he was fighting the cops and stuff like that. I almost know the answer to this question, but does that mean that he deserved to die?
Well, no, and if you already knew the answer to that question,
then I think everything about the situation, he could have had billions of counterfeit bills on him. It doesn't matter. If it's not a justification for him dying, then none
it's a
of that
justification
stuff matters.
for being arrested. He didn't
absolutely.
resist arrest.
Yes, absolutely. But as soon as, but would you not?
And he
agree,
resisted, but they subdued
officer,
him. They had him in handcuffs on the ground. That should have been the end of it.
Yeah. Would you not agree that as soon as he has handcuffs on him, there's very little that he can actually do as a means of fighting back?
Especially with 4 officers there.
Yeah.
Right. I already said that. I said that once they got him down and got him in handcuffs, they should have set him up and put him on his rear end.
You did say that.
Stephen, at the very start,
I've already provided that caveat from the beginning.
Yeah, Stephen, when JT joined, he did not condone the actions of the officer in question, so he's not defending the actions of that particular officer.
I'm not saying you are. I've just heard this whole thing of he was he was fighting the cops, he was doing all this, but it's just if none of that is a justification for him being dead, then I just don't see why it.
I mean,
matters.
if we're being honest here, to be frank, if he had not fought the cops, you think he would still be alive today?
Probably. There you go.
Yeah. So it's almost like it's a better thing for your safety to just do what they tell you to do and then fight it in court later. Because cops aren't judges. We're there on the front lines to determine whether or not a crime is being committed. And the overwhelming evidence pointed to a crime is being committed, and a Class B felony, I believe, at that. So yeah, he was going to get arrested, and then he could fight it in court later if he thought it wasn't just. But instead, he decided to fight them there on the street. And the reason he did that is because he knew they were being filmed, and it did not matter what level of force he used against them; they would be seen as the bad guys no matter what.
JT,
because it emboldens people. Just the same way that you now have people in the protests, in the riots, that are physically going up and attacking cops because they know we're not going to fight back given the current political climate.
Okay. JT, bit of a different question. Well, along the same train, but different route. So, from the outside looking in, it does appear that the US has a bit more of a difficult relationship between the police force and the general civilian population than other countries in Western civilization. And maybe that's because of publicity, maybe it's because of other factors. What do you think has led to that?
I think it's the media.
Well, in most other countries, people aren't afforded the same freedoms that Americans are.
Such as?
Like, we've got the right to carry guns, so that's why the cops had guns as well. And in my state especially, if you are over the age of 19 years old, you can carry a handgun on you, open or concealed, and the only permit you need is the Second Amendment to the Constitution. So that's a big one right there that usually puts our cops on edge because a lot of people have guns. But that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing that lots of people are armed. I believe in an armed populace. But on top of that, you also have a lot more violent crime because there's a lot of culture clash in our country. I mean, you go from coast to coast, you're not going to see a lot of culture differences. But if you get into the Midwest or the South, then there's massive culture differences. On top of that, you have gangs. You've got motorcycle gangs. You've got white supremacist gangs. You've got like the Crips and the Bloods. You've got Latino gangs. You've got cartel offshoots. I mean, there are 800,000 gangs in the United States. Okay, the FBI minimum qualification for a gang is 4 people. Okay, so you're looking at minimum 3.2 million gangsters alone in the U.S. There's only 1 million cops. So right now, the gangsters got us outnumbered 3-1. And then you have to add in all the other criminals that aren't parts of gangs. So, yeah, there's a lot more issues when it comes to the way that we interact with people on the street. Most other countries, you know, if you're a cop, you're not too worried about going up to somebody's window after you pull them over for running a stop sign and getting shot in the head. But that's something that we seriously have to consider because it has happened numerous occasions.
Okay.
I also don't think the media in the United States contributes very much to the relationship between the police and civilians either, because the media sensationalizes at least here in the United States. I'm sure probably other places
absolutely.
well. Definitely here in the United States, they sensationalize on everything they can.
So,
that's because it's for-profit news.
Yeah,
right. They report what they can sell, and it's easiest to sell things that make you angry.
Yes, controversy sells.
Like I saw a headline. There's a boy being sentenced to 65 years because he's responsible for his friend's death after his friend was killed by a police officer. Well, the actual story wasn't anything but that headline. He wasn't being sentenced to 65 years for his friend's death. He was being sentenced to 65 years because he stabbed a cop. And his friend did too, and his friend got shot. Of course, they didn't put that in the headline because the headline makes you angry.
So the first point you made regarding a higher prevalence of guns amongst the civilian population due to your Second Amendment rights. Personally, with me, that's neither here nor there. You can talk to Stephen if you want to learn more about my opinions on the Second Amendment, but the argument you can make that surely the people that are likely to shoot or cause bodily harm to members of the police force could also be the people who would be willing to own illegal firearms in the west of Europe.
Right, but they're not as easily available in Europe.
Okay, so the thought, I'm just trying to unpack this. So the thought is that because
in England, most of the police don't carry guns.
Am
I wrong?
No.
Okay, right. Well, that also leaves them incredibly under-equipped because now they don't have a lot of ways of dealing with somebody who doesn't want to be dealt with. You know, how many? We got that one video of like the yakety sax playing in the background. You got like 30 British Scotland Yard surrounding this one guy that has a machete, and they can't do anything because he's attacking all of them. And it's 1 versus 30, and he's winning because they don't have weapons. Like that's the kind of result that you run into when you don't arm your police.
And they have special reserve forces that can be called within a couple of minutes' notice. But I do get where you're coming from, that there's not that immediate response, that immediate armed response. Other points you made about the gangs and such like that. That's hardly a US centric problem, though, is it? I mean, Western Europe, for example, there's many mishmashing of cultures and gangs, and this is where the mafia originated, for goodness sake. The IRA originated here. We're not a peaceful people. So that's kind of a moot point as well, from my personal perspective.
Yeah, and like,
it's not a moot point because
to kind of tackle...
you can make all the
Sorry, JT.
But hold on. 1 million cops, 320 million citizens, approximately 80 million civilian interactions with police every year. Now, of that 80 million interactions with police every year, less than 500 of them result, or more like less than 1,000 of them result in a death of some kind. So we're already doing astronomically well in that regard.
Okay, so then the answer to my initial question could have been, from your point, that it was media sensationalization was the primary reason for why it is considered that the US police-civilian interaction is so much worse than it is.
Well, yeah, but we already discussed that. Like, yeah, the media sells a narrative that primarily, there is not this massive problem in the United States of police brutality. Okay? On the same fucking weekend that George Floyd was by Derek Chauvin, 18 people were shot. One of them was a 13-year-old girl. Now, I don't remember hearing... I don't remember...
Okay.
It's not just me, robot, is it?
No. JT,
Okay.
you are cutting out. You are roboting all over the place.
Quick question, RIB. Is this going on your YouTube channel?
It is.
Okay. What is the name of your YouTube channel?
Can I be heard better now?
I can send you a link if you
It's
want.
better now, yeah.
Yes. Send me the link.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry, I was driving through a cliff.
You're all right.
What I said was on the same weekend that George Floyd was killed, 18 people were shot and killed in Chicago. One of them was a 13-year-old black girl. Okay? And I don't remember hearing anything about that on the news. I don't remember hearing anything about that in the riots. I don't remember hearing anybody chant her name when they were saying Black Lives Matter.
Who killed her, though?
Another black person.
Was he a cop?
No, it wasn't a cop, it was a gangster.
Alright. Yeah,
I guess
that's
Black Lives Matter when they're shot by other black people.
I think
There's
the whole...
about this narrative.
And that's
It's
facts.
entirely political. It's entirely political. They only care when it is a white cop, specifically a white cop, that kills a black person. Because black cops kill black people at a rate 30 times higher than white cops kill black cops, or white cops kill black people. Because black cops primarily patrol black neighborhoods, and the majority of violent crime in the United States happens in black neighborhoods, and whatever reason you want to tack onto that is beside the point, but that's where the majority of violent crime happens. So that's where the majority of violent police encounters happen, and therefore that's why the majority of black people being killed by the police are being killed by black police officers. But you won't hear about a single one of those on the news. You'll only hear about it when it's a white cop, because it is 100% political. They don't genuinely care about racial injustice. They don't genuinely care about police brutality. What they care about is attention and seizing the opportunity to make the U.S. political scheme bend to their will. You know,
So that's
it's primarily about money, because they make tons of money. George Floyd's family has made over $10 million on GoFundMes that his family didn't even set up. So where's that money going?
So then to unpack maybe what you initially brought up about half an hour ago at this stage, it's a political rot that is the source of much of this issue. Would that be correct in saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just kind of want to respond to one of the things that you had said there. I don't really think that it's that all of the reasons why there is over policing of black neighborhoods and why a lot of crime comes out of there is not all of those reasons are besides the point. For instance, if the US ended its drug war, there would be like an overnight decrease in in crime. But look, my whole kind of issue here is there has been on a systemic level funded by politics that has led to the amount of racial profiling that currently exists in the US by cops. Stop and frisk is a prime example of that. So the whole argument is that like cops will kind of go and patrol where the crime is, and the crime happens to be in the black neighborhoods. What I almost never hear, and what I get frustrated when I hear people bringing this up in like a different debate, if I'm watching it, what I get frustrated when the person arguing against them never does. They never ask why. Why is there so much crime in these areas? Why is it so high? And it's because of a cyclical state of affairs that is happening in all of these neighborhoods. So you have people.
It's a predatory criminal justice system.
Yeah, you will have people who will go to prison for years and years and years on non-violent drug offenses, or on these like minor crimes. And when they get out of prison, then they can't get a job because they have a record, and they need money because they have to feed themselves, they have to clothe themselves, they have to put food on the table, they have to take care of their kids if they have any. And so but because they can't find a job, and they can't find a wage doing decent work, they are ultimately forced to go back into crime. And so it's a cyclical thing. And if you don't address the root issue, so like people kind of say, oh, that like if you can kind of imagine like a dome, right? And there's like several of these domes all over certain neighborhoods, and people go up to the edge of the dome, and there's like, oh, there's issues in there, but people never ask why. People never cross into that dome and look at what is at the very center of it. People never do that, and it fucking annoys me. We have these answers. Criminology is a study for a reason. Sociology is a study for a reason. Psychology is a study for a reason. And if we go to these fields of studies, then we have not all, but some of the answers. And we have measures. There have been studies, there have been papers, there have been peer-reviewed papers by sociologists, by criminologists that have come out and they have said, if here's a list of 5, 6, 7, 8 things, and even if we do some of them, we will see some of these issues, some of these cyclical environments reduce. And it just annoys me. It really pisses me off. And if I wanted to make a cheap fucking point, I would say this: that all of these studies and all of the people who are working in the fields of academia are overwhelmingly left-leaning, and I fucking wonder why. And it's because people who are right-leaning predominantly do what I said earlier. They go to the edge of the dome and they say there's problems in there, fuck them, leave them alone, just let them fucking sort it out themselves. And And as soon as that cyclical experience happens, as soon as people do re-offend, they say, look, I fucking told you, there's nothing but problems in there. They, break the law, they get out, and then they break the law again. But nobody ever, ever, ever asks why, apart from people on the left. And I'm so sorry that came off as a partisan point, but it's fucking true.
Everything you said was 100% true, was beautifully stated. Nobody looks at why crime, and it's not even that it's predominantly it is statistically predominantly in black communities, but greater than that, it's predominantly in poor communities. Why is it that the majority of poor communities tend to have more minorities? I mean, look at it. The average wealth of the white family, the median wealth of the white family is like, what is it, $90-something thousand a year in the United States? For
Something
black
like
families,
that, yeah.
It's like $14,000.
Yeah.
Anybody who thinks that's nothing but systemic, from all of the problems from the last pretty much since the United States has been founded, and even before, all of the problems that have lingered into the modern age that were never addressed. This is the best analogy I give for it. Is that what happened is, in the United States, systemically, we dug a hole and we pushed black people into it, and we kept them in that hole. And then we passed the Civil Rights Act. And so that was pretty much looking over the hole, giving them a thumbs up and saying, all right, you guys can come out. But we didn't give them a ladder to get out. We didn't give them a rope to get out. We didn't try to help them to get out of that hole. We just left them down there and expected them to climb the fuck out.
Yeah.
And they're struggling to climb out. And that's lingering into the modern age.
Yeah, and it's this whole kind of phrase that you will hear as well. Oh, well, pull yourself up like by the bootstraps. Well, what if you don't have the bootstraps?
Rugged individualism.
What if you're wearing your boots but you don't have the bootstraps to pull yourself up by?
Exactly.
And I'm not even necessarily saying that you don't. It's just, well, what if you don't? I mean, like, what do you do then?
And one of the biggest things,
questions, then the answers that we should get if we don't answer these questions is the answers that we have right now. I say we, I mean ye have, but it's just
one of the biggest problems that I point to is, and the thing is, most people don't know what this is, and even the ones that do know what it is don't really understand truly the effects that it had. And that was the policy of redlining, which it persisted from the 40s all the way into the 70s. And that was where banks would literally redline certain districts that were almost exclusively predominantly black, or predominantly a minority, where there weren't a lot of white people. They wouldn't get home loans, they wouldn't get business loans, they wouldn't get bank loans, businesses wouldn't operate in these communities, so there weren't good jobs. The schools in these communities were underfunded, a lot of public housing in these communities, so they don't have the properties to pay the property taxes, to fund good schools, to get good teachers, so they had poor educational opportunities, poor job opportunities, ended up being more poor and living in poverty, pushing them into a life of crime, which again is cyclic due to the systemic injustices in the criminal justice system. And that's not even with the cops. That's with the whole of the U.S. criminal justice system. That policy singularly is probably one of the biggest reasons why we find that predominantly black communities seem to be poorer and more violent. By the way, RIB, can I get that link to your YouTube?
Yeah, sorry, dude.
Are you gonna just give it to me in a direct message, or are you gonna post it in one of the chats?
I will.
One of the text channels. Okay.
I'll DM you.
Right.
I'm back.
Welcome back. Welcome to my hood.
Where did I leave off on? I forgot.
I don't know. Did you hear my epic rant?
No, I didn't. I just now got back.
Well, that's unfortunate.
That was very
I'm trying to think. I think I was talking about the gang shootings and how they don't care. Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
The which?
I just think that maybe if they would start interpolicing themselves a little bit more and campaigning against the gangs, then perhaps there wouldn't be as much criminality for them to get involved with the police to begin with.
JT, on an apolitical topic, how has it been the last couple of weeks operating as a police officer? Has it changed? Or
Yeah, that was actually a question that I was dying to ask you, actually.
For me, not so much. I don't live in an area that was primarily affected by that, so we only had one protest, and it didn't turn into much. They all kind of went home because it was hot outside. We have been a little bit more reserved dealing with people. We noticed that whenever we're in the cities and we're dealing with people, the cameras come out a lot more when they start filming us.
Right.
Yep. So we're a little bit more restrained than we usually are when dealing with people. A little while back, we had an assault case. The guy wouldn't come out of the house. We were telling him to come out. He wouldn't come out. Neighbor was filming us. She hadn't been filming us. Traditionally, what we do is we kick the door in and we drag them out. There's nothing wrong with that. It's constitutionally legal because he's a wanted felon. We know he's in there. He just committed an aggravated assault. So we were going to get him one way or the other. But because we were being filmed, we tried to talk him out because we didn't want to seem like brutes. And the longer we sit there and talk with him, the more of a danger he puts himself and other people in. The more time he has to figure out a plan and attack us when we do eventually go in there. And then she sat there in silence, the lady filming us, sat there in silence the whole time, just filming. And then finally, we give up on trying to talk him out, and we kick the door in and we drag him out. And then she starts complaining, saying that we're being too brutal. Get off of him. What did he do? Why are you doing that? That's not right. You can't do that. If it wasn't bad enough having to deal with this guy who just stabbed his girlfriend, now we have to sit here and listen to this lady who doesn't know a fucking thing about what we're doing. I mean, she wouldn't know the sun if she was staring right into it. And she's telling us how to do our jobs.
The chick that got stabbed was defending the guy?
Huh?
That stabbed her?
No. This was the neighbor. This guy just stabbed his girlfriend
I got you.
And then ran back to his house and barricaded himself inside. And we were trying to get him to come out because that's a first-degree assault. And, domestic assault because it's his girlfriend. And he wouldn't come out. Now, we would have given him 2 chances to come out that door had we not been getting filmed. But because we were getting filmed, we sat there for 20 fucking minutes and argued with this dude to get him to come out of the house. And he just still wasn't going to do it. So we're like, screw the camera, and we went in there and drug him out. Literally drug him out. He was fighting us the whole way. We were dragging him out by his ankles. And then we got on top of him and got him in handcuffs, and she's complaining and bitching the whole time, this neighbor. She doesn't know what just happened. She has no clue, nor does she care. She just wants to feel superior and sanctimonious. And she's going to put that on YouTube thinking she's the good guy. But unfortunately, she filmed us in portrait mode, so everybody's going to hate her. Classic.
You gotta love it when shit like that backfires on somebody. I think it's funny.
JT, it's a very interesting perspective you do bring to it. It's from listening to different opinions talk on today's podcast. It does appear because of whatever situations, whatever they may be, are currently at play in the US. Maybe US cops necessarily have to start off at a higher gear than maybe cops in, like, especially in my native land, but also other kind of Western countries. And is that maybe disconnect is where some of the outrage is coming from?
I think that it's primarily manufactured. People like to feel angry about something. It gives them a mission, a purpose in life. Indignance is sort of a recreation for a lot of people.
I can sympathize with that.
Which is why, like I said, primarily every major headline you read, if you go on the news, It's written in such a way to make you angry, because those are the
That's why I
headlines that
don't
attract
watch news. I hate watching it. I hate it. I read. Because I can actually read an article, follow up on the sources that they're citing, and figure out what the real story is.
This is a point I didn't bring up to now, but I do think that murder is disgraceful, and quite possibly, for better or worse, the peaceful protests may lead to some degree of betterment. I don't know. I don't know what that form that will take. We'll see what happens. But I think if this hadn't happened right after the whole country had been shut down for 3 months, I don't think it would have gotten the same amount of coverage.
Neither do I.
Well,
I
on
think
that note,
people are
think
cooped up. Yeah.
think about this for a second. So the country's been shut down for 3.5 months.
Mm.
People have been going hungry because they can't feed their kids. You know, $1,200 is not going to last anybody 3 months. Not going to do it. Okay? So people are sort of protesting the lockdown. They're like, let us go back to work. We'll wear masks. We'll sanitize. We need to work or we cannot live. Okay? And what do the media call those protesters? Threats to national security. Selfish. Bullies. White supremacists. Whatever buzzword they can think of it, that's what they call them. Okay? Then they urged the president to shut them down with martial law. I kid you not. You had Don Lemon on TV telling the president that he was maliciously negligent because he wouldn't use the police to shut those protesters down. Then you get the George Floyd protesters, okay? And you have healthcare workers coming outside, walking shoulder to shoulder with these people without masks on, and they're being praised as heroes, okay? They start to burn people's buildings down and stores down, and Trump uses the police to intervene. Oh, he gets condemned for it. Okay, so the protesters who were peacefully saying, hey, we want to go back to work, they're threats to national security. The people who are setting targets on fire around the country, national heroes. Okay, if you needed any more evidence that it was political,
is it really true, though, that the people that are burning down buildings are celebrated as heroes?
No, I think it's the peaceful protesters that are. I don't conflate the rioters and the peaceful protesters. I don't see them as the same.
Here's the thing, and this is going to be somewhat of an olive branch.
These people up on a CNN panel. You had Don Lemon, one other guy, I don't remember his name. It's one of those weird pseudo-African names. And then you had the female anchor that sits with Don Lemon sometimes. They're all sitting there talking. They're talking about the rioters, and Don Lemon said something to the effect of, yeah, they're always going to point to the rioters, but the rioters are just as much heroes in this too, because the Civil Rights Act didn't get passed through words; it got passed through violence. Okay, so they're literally encouraging violence on national television. Yes, they are hailing them as heroes.
CNN's just as bad as Fox News. Let's be honest.
I was just going to say, I mean, like CNN is terrible, but here's going to be somewhat of an olive branch.
When you ask the question, are the people burning down buildings being hailed as heroes? Yes, by a disturbing amount of people. They are being hailed as heroes. By national TV anchors, they are being hailed as heroes. By pretty much every blue check mark motherfucker who lives in the ivory tower on Twitter hails them as heroes. The fucking mayor of Minneapolis actually unequivocally stated, and for the people who wanted to destroy things, we gave them a space to destroy. No, you didn't. They took it, and you just didn't do anything about it.
Yeah, I don't think the mayor of Minneapolis handled that very well at all.
Yeah.
It's absurdity.
Here's going to be somewhat of an olive branch. I don't think that the people who are looting and who are burning down businesses are any more representative of the group as a whole as the genuine good cops are as like they are to the guy who killed George Floyd. They like just because you have some extremely bad cops does not mean that all of them are bad, and just because you have some people who are looting and who are burning down businesses does not mean that that is the goal and that is the desire of everybody who is protesting.
Right. Okay, that's a fair point, but
Yes,
one exception.
yes, I will 100% agree with you. I as well don't think that there would be as much numbers if the country wasn't forced to be, indoors for 3 months. But I genuinely think that the number of people, if you were to break that down as a percentage of the total number of protesters, the people that are there just because they have been locked inside for 3 months and not because they are genuinely outraged or at least disturbed by what happened, I think that is like a fraction of a percentage.
Cynically, I don't agree with that.
Okay, that's going to have to be a point of disagreement then.
Yeah.
The most on a percentage scale that I'm willing to go to that is about 5.
Really?
Yeah, genuinely.
I think a lot of the people protesting this are genuinely outraged because they've been shot
Yeah.
with tear gas, they've been shot with pepper spray and rubber bullets, and they keep going
Yeah.
back out. Whereas the people that were protesting the lockdown were literally flying Confederate flags and literal Nazi flags and calling it communism. They were protesting the fact they couldn't go to a fucking Dave and Buster's, while these people are protesting literal murder in the streets. I think that there's definitely a divide there.
Oh yeah, I've no issue with that particular divide. It's just I think that had there not been treat COVID as a natural disaster. If there hadn't been a natural disaster that prevented social interaction before all this went down, there wouldn't be as many people out protesting. Because
okay, so just out of curiosity, what's the percentage number that you think that wouldn't that are there simply because they have been locked inside? Like, is it 10? Is it 20? Is it half?
I hedged it about 25. About 25. 25 on the low end, I'd say.
I mean that's yeah, okay, you're going to get absolutely nothing, only disagreement there.
No, that's fair enough. Maybe I'm just more cynical about the nature of humans than you are.
The kind of the reasons why they are protesting, and I'm sorry to say, JT, that I have to disagree with something that you said. Okay, like this is maybe a little bit unfair because you said about 25 minutes ago now. The reasons why they are protesting in the first place, because of police brutality, has only risen to more cases of police brutality.
Can I clarify my point for you one still quick?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So, if you were to ask people why they're there, yes, the answer they probably would give would be because of police brutality. But I don't think that they, under normal circumstances, they would have gone out. I think an awful lot of people are bored and they saw something to do. And that's just me being very cynical to the nature of people. But because
I agree.
I think both of you can be right at the same time, that people were mad that they were stuck at home and wanted something to do, and this gave them an option to do it, but they are still genuinely outraged at what happened. I definitely think both can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
I accept that point. Maybe perhaps COVID might have lowered the bar of...
Yes.
Lowered the bar of what needed to be done for action to occur. If that makes sense.
I saw on
maybe
the news,
I don't know.
I saw on the news like just people flooding the highways, and like police officers would try to block traffic so nobody would get hit, and they just let all of people walk, and it looks like thousands and thousands of people, but a lot of them weren't even holding signs, weren't doing. At least they made like cheap signs, and it would just say hashtag George Floyd or something like that, and they were all just walking with no purpose.
Can I give a great example? Oh, sorry, no. No, Ash, you finish your point. Finish your point.
But it's okay. Sorry. I think those same. It's okay. I think those same people would just be angrily typing on Twitter, but because I've been at home all day. Oh, look, it looks kind of fun to just walk on the highway for the first time in my entire life. Let me just go do that.
Exactly.
It gives them something to do, and maybe it's not out of mouth.
No, Stephen, I was not made to finish my point. So.
Okay, this was unlike a tiny point, but okay.
So was mine. Unlike previous instances of police brutality, where there were protests in the US, rightfully so, there weren't worldwide. Stephen, we've had protests in Dublin There was one that had to be cancelled on Wexford Street. There were protests in New Zealand.
Protests in Australia, protests in
In
Germany,
Australia.
protests in the United Kingdom, protests in Sweden, protests in Canada.
Exactly.
There's even been protests in Mexico.
Maybe, okay, quite possibly they all have greatness and goodness in their heart and they want to sympathise with
out there, they had nothing better to do. They only in this way because, oh, I can be justful and commit a crime at the same time, maybe.
Alrighty, guys, I gotta take off. I'm gonna head out here.
All right, good luck.
Perfectly. Thank you very much.
Thanks for
joining us.
Okay, so Esther, I know it's been a hot minute, but we are gonna. You had wanted to say something.
Oh, so sorry for
God.
overrunning. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I was talking to my mom for maybe 2 minutes, so I wasn't listening. So I don't know if what I said was already addressed. But it was a comment to what you had said, how it's about, he would still be alive if he were black. And I don't disagree, but I don't want to leave out the other factors. And I think when you talk about race and when we talk about because he's black or because he's white, it's it's the end result, but it's quite the train to get there. I think it's a combination of colorism. It's probably a combination of classism as well, because how you mentioned Wall Street, these people are going everywhere in suits and ties. They look like they're going somewhere important, and people are less likely to intervene when somebody looks like they're going somewhere that they have to be at. They walk a certain way, their demeanor changes, versus someone who is in a poorer community. And we judge people all the time by the way they dress, by their facial expressions, by their body language. And so I think when we talk about those certain things, how it's because he's black, and I think it's because the way he was handled is because of all of those things that factor out. And the quickest way we get to that point is because he's black, is because we look at them and we judge them by what we see with our eyes. That's pretty much what I want to say. It's not that I disagree with you, though.
Yeah. This, I don't know why this has kind of popped up in my head, but it was something that was mentioned a bit earlier, that all of this stuff has kind of happened when we have, black governors and black mayors and all this sort of thing. Cornel West is someone that I know, Kevin, at least you're familiar with because he was on the Rogan podcast. Does that name kind of is that known by everybody?
Yeah.
Yes, no, maybe? Okay, anyway, he made the and I mean excellent point, which is that he said that that we've tried this idea of black faces in high places, and it evidently hasn't worked, because if you go back to the year that Black Lives Matter was founded, it was in 2014. That was 6 years ago. And I don't need to tell you who the president... Yeah, okay. Well, 7 years ago. Either way, I don't need to tell you who the president was at that time. You had a black president, you had a black attorney general, and you had someone else in an extremely high position who was also black. So Obama getting elected, not just once but twice, was kind of seen as this idea of that racism is not that much of an issue. It's not that big a deal anymore because we have a black president. It's literally the highest position that you can get to. Whereas it was founded during his second term. Now, Obama, when he got into office first, not even necessarily one of the things that he was running on, because that would be seen as identity politics, and people just hate that. I mean, Hillary is literally the case and fucking point of that. But he could have done so fucking much to address systemic racism, and yet he didn't. Yet one of the most well-known, not just especially now, but also, I mean, if you go back 2 years, Black Lives Matter was known by a lot of different people. It was not just in the States, but in other countries as well. the kind of biggest question that I had that I have is, why was it needed that an organization that was pointing out the fact that there is systemic racism and that there is all of these big issues and there is racism in the police, that there is racial profiling, why was that needed when a black person was in the highest position of power that anybody can get to
Because
in the United States?
Because if Obama did anything, he would take a lot of money out of a lot of people's pockets. He's pointing out the wrongdoings of the system and end up taking a lot away from that system, and a lot of people are going to lose what they want.
Damn right.
Rib, I'm sorry, but I'm having a hard time understanding the question. Like, if you could just word it one more time.
Yeah, it's just, why was an organization that is set up to stand up to racism needed under a point in history where it was considered to be all but gone?
Yeah. It's more of an open-ended statement than a question, is it?
Well, yeah,
sort of, yeah.
I say
sort of. It's actually, entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm having such a hard time understanding the question.
So I believe the idea is that even in a situation where the highest members of government are black, it was felt necessary to establish this movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, to further the well-being of the black community, presumably. So the fact that those two things coincided at the same time, that kind of disconnect of black people in the highest level of government, while still needing to create a kind of a grassroots movement to can defend their rights. So why did that lead to be? Why was that a thing?
I think that's okay. Now I understand the question. I think that's a really, really great question. But I think people realize that representation isn't as important. Like putting a black president doesn't automatically solve black people's problems. Especially if he's not going to do anything to solve the black people's problems. I think that we asked, like, oh, we need more of this, we need more of that. And then we realized, oh, that actually doesn't solve our problems, does it? So Obama was half white. You can take whatever you want with that information and do whatever you please. But I don't even think we could get to that point. You know what I mean? Like, we couldn't even get a 100% black president. Like, come on. But, like, I'm just messing here. But I think that's really the point. Representation doesn't necessarily matter. That you can put a black president, you could have a black police chief, a black mayor, black governor. That doesn't solve the issues in the black community.
Yeah, because as Stephen said earlier on, just because a black president is in office doesn't mean he's going to kowtow to identity politics, does it?
Yeah, I don't think I ever. Well, he made a reference to it one time, like, oh yeah, now we have a black president, and everybody in the crowd cheered about it.
I'm sure he did. Yeah, I'm sure he did to gain a few votes. He didn't do anything with it, though, did he?
And so many people. Like, I was in my political science class, and it was like the first day of classes, and we were just going around the room and talking about our names and on our favorite political movement, and everybody, I'd say like 80% of the class was just like, oh yeah, Barack Obama became president, that was really cool. And people just think, oh yeah, the first black president. Like, I think we have like this sort of hive mind when it comes to things like this. Like, it doesn't matter what he did, it doesn't matter the mistakes he made, it doesn't matter. You look at him, oh, he's the first black president compared to all the other ones, he must be amazing. And we just idolize this person, and we realize it doesn't solve anybody's problems. Too much.
Yeah, It's
Yeah, I get it.
no.
Not at all.
Okay.
Well, these problems are probably going to continue to the end of this nation because the black community inherently started off on a different foot than everyone else. America fought for their rights. They did, and the blacks did somewhat of a similar thing back in the 60s. What's going to happen is the nation is going to continue to treat them unequally until we change even the bed frame of everything.
What does that entail?
Well, what I mean is, the nation will continue to be inherently racist, pointing towards the white guy who saved us and all that, instead of the black guy who made big changes. And we're just gonna continue in this cycle of hatred until we destroy, this nation and build another one where we all start off on the same foot.
Okay, utopia. So you're given a magic wand, and you're told to put into place policies that will fix this. What do you do?
Policies won't make anything different. What we need is change a bed frame, destroy the nation, and build a new one.
Okay, so you're that type of person, are you?
Oh, yeah, with pretty solid reasons. I mean, like, I've seen here in America, people are always discriminatory. People always hate others just because they start off in a different way of history. Black people are hated because they were slaves, and they were seen as lesser than. If you want things to change, let's change the bed frame of it.
That's not unique to the US though.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. You can take a look at, let's say, Ireland and those people that y'all were talking about, and how y'all lived out history. Y'all lived out totally different histories. Y'all lived totally different lives. And thus, neither of y'all can understand one another.
So is what you... I do get where you're coming from. It's a good place. Is what you want realistic though?
I believe that if there was a proper militia built up, we could end up taking down our own government and building a new one where we are all seen as equals.
Okay, and you don't see the same problems cropping up very quickly. You don't think that'd be inevitable now? Just maybe a different set of players with the same circumstances.
I would say that if we started off at the same starting point, we would end up being a lot better off.
China tried to do that, didn't they?
China tried it.
Yeah, they killed a couple of 100 million people to do that.
Yeah, but they did it through authoritarianism. I believe that if we just do this with our government and do it the same way, we could end up making it right. Not like China, but like America.
Yeah, so not authoritarian, just with guns.
Oh,
which is
everyone's
political
going to have
violence.
to go.
Yeah, just with political violence in the name of the government. That's not authoritarian at all.
Yeah, no, I completely denounce any and all types of violence politically. I think that the only kind of like non-violent way of doing that would be to kind of slowly, methodically vote out all of the, corporatists and the politicians who are bought and paid for, and then slowly implement people who are not going to do that. But I mean, we're talking about like 30 years minimum probably before that happens, and that's just not soon enough. There has to be a better way of doing it.
Oh, that would stay the same way if people have money. If someone has the money, they have the power. So they're going to decide what goes on. They're not going to say, oh, let's all be equal.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily, because there is a way of doing it where you don't have to do it slowly and you don't have to do it through violence either, which has already been proposed, which is the 28th Amendment, which is to ban money in politics.
We tried that, but it still goes on even today. You know why?
When did you try that? Because it was news to me.
We tried making all that illegal over here in the United States, but it still goes on. We still see people give money to politicians that are into their favor.
Okay, but that's not what I asked you. I asked you when.
What do you mean?
Well, you had said that it had been tried before,
Yeah.
So if you're saying that it has been tried before, then surely you know when it was tried before.
Whenever that law was set up.
What law?
The 28th Amendment is not a thing; it's a proposal.
Why have we not, tried that proposal?
Because it goes against the people who would have to pass it.
Yeah, exactly. It goes against the people who are profiting massively off of the corporations that are paying their wages.
Well, until we destroy those corporations, systemic problems that are going on.
That's another thing, though, dude. You're talking about destroying corporations. This is a way of doing it where it doesn't have to. It's not slow, it's not violent, and it doesn't have to destroy any corporations.
What exactly are we proposing here?
I don't know.
Making it so that politicians can only fundraise and can only get elected through a grassroots method, through small dollar donations only. So there is no billionaires giving a politician, a couple of $100,000, and then, oh my God, magically, as soon as they're in politics for 2 months, they're fighting for and voting for giving those people tax breaks so that they make that money back. It's an investment for them, because they're thinking of, okay, if I give this guy $100,000 and he gets in, he's going to cut my taxes, so I'm going to save 2 million. It's an investment for them. Stop that. The corporations can continue. They can still do business in the United States, but it's basically a roundabout way of forcing politicians to do what they are fucking founded for, which is to fight for the people.
Would that count self-funded billionaires like Bloomberg and stuff like that?
I'm not going to lie to you, that's a little bit of a grey area.
Yeah, because if it didn't, then it surely would just open the playing field for politics to become a billionaires playing field. Yeah.
Possibly, but I mean, if you're running a campaign and you are genuinely for, let's just imagine that they are an AOC-like figure. I'm only using her because she's the most notable of all of the squad. I could have easily just said Ro Khanna, but probably none of you know who he is. But anyway, that was slightly condescending, and I do apologize for that. Anyway. If you could have a that person-like figure, an AOC-like figure, who is going to go out there and is going to say, if you elect me, I'm going to do things like fight for Medicare for all, fight for a Green New Deal, fight for all of the things that she is in favor of, right? Now, whether you agree or disagree with that, the point is, the argument can be so unbelievably easily made that if the billionaire is elected, billionaires have billionaire friends, and they all stick together and they all fight for each other.
This is true.
You can make the argument, well, if this guy gets in, he's going to fight for, as I had said, tax cuts, for, subsidies, for all of these things that ultimately benefit billionaires and fuck over you. That makes that person incredibly electable, because you are shifting the playing field. You are shifting the conversation to basically say, I'm going to fight for you, and he is going to fight for somebody else that doesn't give a fuck about you.
Yeah, I agree. Preaching to the choir with this one. Again, over here, with the way his laws are set up, you couldn't buy the local politician lunch without being accused of being a lobbyist. So.
Yeah.
Then
but here's the other thing, Kevin, just to kind of sorry, go on.
Oh, well, in order for that to work, then we would have to destroy the representative democracy that we currently have.
Why are we destroying things?
Why?
I don't know why we're destroying things.
No, I don't mean destroy it through violence. I mean, take it down and turn it into direct democracy.
You told me, how quickly do you want this to happen, though?
But that's not even necessarily the case. You wouldn't have to.
No, it is a question. Though. It is a question, because if he thinks,
I understand it's a question. I'm just taking issue with the general premise, not with your question. It's just the general.
Let me answer the question.
Okay.
So this whole destruction upheaval, how quickly do you want this to happen? Ish.
I would hope in the next year or so.
All this to happen in a year.
Yeah, if we're organized enough.
We're screwed.
So massive upheaval of both political and corporate holdings. So how roughly ballpark, how many people do you think will die of famine and such like that?
I'd say 30 million.
30 million. That's all. That's a steal compared
And
to what China had to pay first.
we're just gonna call that.
Yeah, 30 million. That's how many 9/11s, which was seen as a tragedy. That's still
That's how
ringing
many
clear to this
Holocaust?
day. Yeah, exactly. That's a really weird.
But I think
It's a
that
really weird
goes
metric you
hand
have
in
there.
hand with this whole trying to start over the entire country.
5 World War IIs.
Oh,
Yeah, I
if
mean,
you want this to change,
Oh.
then
Half World War II, sorry.
anyway, I mean, like, this would. We've tried different ways. We've tried electing in the right people. We've tried creating new laws, and we tried reforming the people. It hasn't worked. So right now, as far as I see it, in order to equalize everyone, the ends will justify the means, and sure, a lot of people will die. But what are we going to have to do? It's exactly the same thing. We're going to have to continue to go through conflict.
I have a broken finger, so I'll cut I have a broken finger, so I'll cut my arm off, and eventually I'll get used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this isn't just for me. This is for my children and my children after them. This is for the future generations. This is so that I can save more than just millions, but possibly billions.
Okay, so you have all of that. You have all of that, or you could implement the 28th Amendment and do it all very, very quickly with no need of people dying and no need of famine and no need of any of these other things. There's no need of violence. There's no, just do it. Do a 28th Amendment, ban big money from politics, and it's just.
Then if I do that, there's still going to be conflict because our representatives, they are funded by a lot of the millionaires that are, in power currently. And
Utopia. Do you think in your utopian society that you're creating, do you think the people at the top are just going to be automatons that don't have needs and wants and desires? Or going to be corruption that's going to be created in your brand new society? It'll just start over.
Through direct democracy, those people would be continuously taken out with new people to represent the people properly.
I think, in all honesty, I think a huge part of politics is either doing what's right or doing what makes people happy. I don't trust the population. I think a lot of, I would say maybe even 70% stretching. I don't really mind. Maybe 70%
I don't trust
of
the population either.
Doesn't. So why would you want direct democracy if you think that half the? I mean, because if you think about what's happening right now, people are looting. Store this one person. Well, obviously there's more problems, but like people are looting stores. Like business owners who had nothing to do with this are being looted and losing their property. When the coronavirus started, people were buying toilet paper as if that's more important than buying vitamins so you stay healthy. Like people are stupid. Like I'm just gonna say people are really dumb. And I don't think direct democracy is going to lead to a good country because people are going to choose themselves and their selfishness and their happiness over what is actually right.
For direct democracy to work, you have to be you would have to be assured that every single voter was incredibly informed on all the issues. Really, really.
They would force themselves to be informed because they would notice, oh shoot, this
force is an interesting word.
They would force themselves. I wouldn't force them. The people would realize, oh, this is wrong. I don't like this. I'm losing money out of this. I'm going to go ahead and vote this instead. And the majority of people would come to an agreement and realize, oh, this is wrong. Let's do this instead.
So then this becomes this just becomes the politics of marketing. Then whoever can convince more people to vote one way wins.
Yikes, that's true.
Pretty much. That's disastrous, man. That's disastrous.
I didn't
think
plan on saying this like at all tonight, but my whole kind of, if I could, Kevin, I think it was you earlier that kind of said, if you could kind of snap your fingers and kind of make what you think. I think that the correct way to form a society is through a thought experiment of, if you can imagine that we have created or that we have found a new landmass large enough to create a new country, right? Brand new country, brand new people, brand new government, everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
How would you want that society, that country to be set up, not knowing what you are going to enter it as? So you don't know whether you are going to enter this new society as male, as female, as trans, as gay, straight, as bisexual, as rich, as poor, as thin, as fat, as tall, as short, as... You don't know. You are a completely blank slate. Come up with a list of 10 things that you would want in that society. I guarantee you are going to have the strongest social safety net and absolute equality across the fucking board instantly. Those are going to be the number 2 things. Guaranteed. Because if you don't know that you are going to... If you create a new society that doesn't give a fuck about poor people, that basically just says, you know what, they're poor, fuck them, who gives a shit?
They're lazy.
And you enter that society as dirt poor, as literally have 2 coins to fucking rub together, and that's all you have to your name, you're gonna be fucked. But if you if you make a new society that says that if you are at the lower end of the economic ladder, that there are protections in place, that there are programs in place, that healthcare is free across the board at the point of service for everybody, then it doesn't matter what you enter that society at. If you enter it under the same conditions as dirt poor, you're gonna be okay. That's what we should have done. Now, take that idealistic world and try and put it into practice. How can we get that idealistic world into America right now?
Well, are you asking somebody, or
no? It's more of like a hypothetical. It's more of like a point. It's more of like it's a thought experiment. It's a who would you like? If you were told under like a completely what's the word I'm thinking of? Transparent situation where you have one person who is going to fight for somebody that they don't know and is going to fight for people to have protections, to have social security protections, to have health insurance. Or if you are given the option of voting for that person or voting for somebody that you know takes money from the oil industry, takes money from big pharma, takes money from the health insurance industry. Like, really, which one of those 2 are you going to vote for?
The first one.
The first one. But that's what I'm saying. That's the obvious answer. So a way of doing that is getting money out of politics and forcing politicians to fight for the people that got them in that position in the first place, not to fight for some bank or some corporation that gave them a healthy check and then fuck over the people who took time out of their day to walk into a voting room and put their name down on the ballot. Whereas this, like, to me, and I may be coming from a place of bias considering how left I am, but for me this is just basic. This is obvious.
We had something like this happen before. It's called the Civil War. And whenever we tried changing those laws, guess what? The rich down in the South, they got their people organized and started a civil war, which killed 700,000 people.
Yeah, and how did it work out for them?
And we still got these racial issues.
No, but I'm just saying, just to kind of isolate that thing, like, how did it How did it work out for them?
It created equality and saved us all.
No.
Yeah, sure.
Huh?
No, I'll give you a hint. They lost.
Sure, they lost. The South lost. But also, if we're going to start fighting against corporations that continue to put in money into this political machine, then it's still going to need a lot of deaths.
Okay,
But
I see that you're kind
what
of outlining.
created equality exactly?
Sorry, I didn't hear you right.
Sorry.
What was that?
Okay. No, I was just saying what created equality.
I would say the conflict that we went through whenever we saved the slaves, or quote unquote equality, as you would know it.
Okay. Well, after the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment, that was the rise of the KKK. So.
Yeah, so this conflict still needs to continue, and it's just how it is. People are going to kill people for their own interests. In order to change this nation, we don't need just some civil war. We need to cause a whole damn revolution so that everyone is saved.
Okay.
Actually, just to build upon a point you brought up, Utopia. Maybe this is me being cynical, but I don't think that the human race will achieve equality whilst scarcity is a thing. There will always be people who have more and people who have less.
Yeah,
and the way of getting more will always be to ensure that others get less. If scarcity is still a thing, it's a net loss type of it's a net loss game we're playing at the minute. So until that changes,
100%.
Until that changes, these are the rules we have to play with. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. I think in America, it's not. I think ideally, originally, it's about not everyone having an opportunity, but it's about anyone can have the opportunity. It's sort of like the lottery. Everyone can play, but not everyone will win. But it's about that chance that you might that makes people want to come here. And so the idea of everybody having an equal playing field, that scares me. It sounds cool and it sounds awesome because it's like, wow, even the poor people, they'll get an opportunity to do whatever they want. And that sounds like a really good thing. But everybody? It's like I don't trust people enough to have all of that power and all of that ability to just move up and not even know in what direction, because some people handle their wealth perfectly fine. Other people can't do jack shit when they become rich. Like they just waste their money on drugs and all sorts of things. I'm just coming up with examples, but yeah. I don't like the idea of anyone is the whole point of America, that anyone can make it here.
Is that tricky?
It's not in practice, but that's the theory.
It's that tricky line you have to trade between equality and equity, isn't it?
Exactly.
I mean, equality of outcomes of opportunities is obviously what we want, but given how systemic all nations probably are, all nations that are over 100 years old, i.e. basically all of them, they all have systemic checks and balances, unfairnesses in place. So that some level of equity is required, I do think. But it's finding that balance between equality of opportunity and quality of outcome that is really tricky, and I think that's where most conflict does lie, I think.
Yeah. I agree 100%.
Yeah, I like my kind of confusion, I guess. In Utopia, you have kind of clearly outlined your point A and your point B, but I am at a loss as to how you are getting point B from point A. So you're saying that like if we do all of these idealistic things, that it will inevitably, and the only reason that I use that word is because in I think every example that you've brought up, you have kind of you have also said this, that it will lead to conflict, or that it will lead to death, or that it will lead to some sort of struggle. I'm just, I don't understand how you're connecting the two, or why they need to be connected.
Because throughout history, from what I've seen, every single time we've tried being free or we've tried being equal, it required blood.
He's got a point.
The French Revolution, for example, they fought for their freedom and everything, yet they still were oppressed, and they've wasted all that blood for nothing. Take a look at the USSR. They fought for equality, and yet still wasted all that blood in the name of equality.
And so do you want to hold on more people to waste their blood in equality?
Well, yeah, I
mean, I was just about to ask that.
That's true, but history is one of our greatest teachers. So should we not learn from what has happened in history?
We've also seen it happen here in America, where it has freed us and liberated us and helped us in many ways.
Led us to the civilization that you want to burn down.
Oh, right now the civilization that we've led to has now finally become corrupt. Back in the 50s and 30s and 20s, yeah, there was still inequality, but at least we had that total freedom. Now look, we've lost our freedom, and we aren't equal. So we have to fight for both, I guess.
Well,
how have you lost your freedom?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you didn't have total freedom back in the 30s and all of the other decades.
The KKK was at its peak. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, I know that. They didn't have as much power as, ever. The way the KKK were a very small percentage, even back in their prime.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Gay people weren't free to live their lives, and trans people weren't free to live their lives.
Yeah, exactly.
For
Kevin,
one example.
literally took the words literally directly out of my mouth. Like, how were gay people living back in the 30s? Because successfully and freely and openly is not words that I would use to describe it.
No.
We're going to continue in this cycle, and there's nothing we can do.
Not with
cycle of giving people more freedoms? The cycle of adding freedoms to people?
Well,
that sounds awful.
We've seen that, trying to fight for freedom and trying to fight for equality has led us down to all these problems. So either we continue to fight until we get what we want, or we all just bow down and let this happen.
You're making an awful lot of vagaries. You're going to point to a specific fight and a specific freedom.
Here in America, we fought for our liberties back in our revolution.
Yeah.
And then, again, we fought for equality back in the 60s. The blacks fought for their equality. And yet we're still unequal.
And we talk about... And we still commemorate the 10 million people that died in the civil rights movement, don't we?
Yeah.
I'm being smart here. I'm being sarcastic. You're talking about a blood-filled revolution that will lead to a number that you supplied of 30 million people dying in a year. And that's the issue that we're all kind of caught up on. We're not equating a couple of different variables here.
Yeah, I know. It's just that's the only way I see it happening. We tried regulating ourselves. We tried creating new laws, and it hasn't worked. Okay. Either we spill enough blood until people notice, or we continue with what we got. We just let ourselves get oppressed even more and more through day by day.
Such as? How are you oppressed more than you were 10 years ago? You personally?
Me personally, I can name off our population over the past 30 years, but not 10 years. I would say my people have been more oppressed because corporations have come more into power. They continue to have all that money. Back then, the government wasn't involved in our lives. Back in the 20s, government was almost powerless against the people, and anyone could become a businessman or a capitalist. Now you see that the corporations now lobby more power, vote in more of their own people. Now we've lost that equality. We're in corporatism instead of pure capitalism.
It's an interesting point to make. It does seem like you're trying to equate kind of conflicting points, but however, I will call to an appeal of it's god awful late here where we are in Ireland, and I'm kind of run out of steam. Stephen, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's no problem. I mean, we've been going for about 2 hours 20 now, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
if you want to just kind of I don't know, anybody have any like last words or last statements that they want to make or something?
Yeah. Weren't we talking about George Floyd?
We're supposed to be, yeah.
We were supposed. Well, look, I mean, we talked about
Deviated.
like that and the situation at large for like the majority of the podcast, I would say. So
But
a little bit of deviation at the end is allowed.
Yeah, listen. That this is what I love about doing podcasts. I don't think if you run a podcast by bullet point, okay, we're going to talk about this, and then we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to end the podcast, and then we're finished. That's the worst listening experience ever.
Yeah.
Utopia.
It is.
Utopia. Even though I don't agree with much of what you said, I love the fact that you joined because you've brought a very interesting point to the conversation.
Oh yeah, no problem. I'm up to join anytime.
Oh, absolutely. We'd love to have you anytime. This has been fascinating to talk about.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, cool.
Sorry, I was useless.
No, not
at all. Perfect.
No, I'm just messing.
No, I think if I could try and end it on some form of or on some point of agreement, I think if we kind of look back over the last year, maybe a little bit more, with everything that kind of happened at the end of last year, with the fires in Australia, at the start of this year with COVID-19, I think if we all like just think about it for just a moment, and I think if we're all being kind of truthful with ourselves, and if we could just be honest for just a split second, I don't think that anything has been the same since Tony Stark died in Endgame. So that's just me.
Wow.
Holy shit.
I mean,
not wrong.
I was just going to say, prove me wrong.
I was gonna take it all the way back to Harambe getting shot. But
There's another.
I was going to take it all the way. I was going to take it back to the catastrophic ending to Game of Thrones. This is the universe punishing us.
I was going to take it back to the creation